Some nights the quiet in this house feels louder than any siren. My name is Evelyn Carter, and I'm 90 years old. The regret that comes to sit with me is a phone call I didn't return. I live alone now. I move slower and the rooms feel bigger. After dark, every sound echoes. The hallway clock and the refrigerator, the wind brushing the window frame. And sometimes I hear an old telephone ring that isn't ringing. I was raised in Ohio, in a town where folks knew your family and your business. I was born in 1935. We didn't say much about feelings. If you loved somebody, you showed it by showing up. At 18, I went to Cleveland and worked in a sewing factory. I met my husband, Harold, at a church social. He'd come home from Korea, quiet but kind. We married in 1956, rented a little place with creaky floors, and started building a life the best way we knew. We had 2 children, Mary first, then Tommy 4 years later. Harold worked at the mill. I kept the house and picked up part-time work when money got tight. It was a loud life, pots clanking, kids running, radio playing. I liked the noise. Noise can cover up a lot. Tommy was a tender kid. He'd bring me dandelions like they were roses. But by 16, he got restless. He wanted freedom, and he wanted it fast. Vietnam was on the television, and the country felt strained. Harold and I watched the news, and we watched Tommy too, like we could read the future in his face. Tommy didn't go. He said he wasn't going to fight in a war he didn't believe in. Harold took that as disrespect. I took it as danger. And instead of talking like a family, we fought like strangers. I called him selfish. I said he was bringing shame on us. Harold said he'd never raised a son like that. We were scared, and we dressed that fear up as anger. One night Tommy stood by the front door with a bag. His voice was calm, which made it worse. He said, "You don't even know me." And I said, "I know enough." That was my line. That was the last line I gave him. He left, and then we had years of nothing. Not clean silence, that messy kind where you still think about them, but you pretend you don't. Once a postcard came from California, a beach photo. 2 words on the back, "I'm alive." No return address. I kept it in my kitchen drawer, trying to keep him close. Harold died in 1978, quick as a door slamming. After the funeral, I went into Tommy's old room and sat on the edge of his bed. I stared at that faded baseball blanket and felt this ache in my throat, like I'd swallowed a stone. I wanted to call my son so bad it hurt, but I still didn't know where. Mary married and moved to Indiana. I became the grandma who mailed birthday cards early. I worked. I paid bills. I smiled in the grocery store. And in the quiet moments, I wondered what Tommy looked like as a grown man, and if he had kids who didn't know my name. Then, in 1994, the phone rang, and it was him. I was peeling potatoes at the kitchen table. The telephone was on the wall, beige with a long cord. I wiped my hands on my apron and picked up. He said, "Hi, Mom." I sat down hard. His voice was deeper, but it was his. For a second I couldn't speak, and when I did, I didn't say hi back. I said, "Where have you been?" Because fear grabs the steering wheel. He gave me pieces. He'd been driving trucks. He was in Kentucky. He had a little girl. He wasn't with her mother. He said, "I should have called sooner." Then he said, careful and quiet, "I don't have long. I just wanted to hear you, and I wanted to ask if you'd be willing to talk sometime. Not to fight, just talk." I can still hear the traffic behind him, like he was outside on a payphone. I can still hear how careful his words were, like he was holding something fragile. And I can still hear myself doing what I always did when I felt hurt. I tightened up. I said, "You can't disappear for all those years and call like nothing happened." He didn't shout. He just got small in his voice. He said, "No, you're right." Then he said, "I'm sorry." I asked for his number. He repeated it twice. I wrote it on the back of a grocery envelope. I told him I'd call him back that evening when things calmed down. He said, "Okay, Mum, I'll be waiting." I hung up and stared at that number. My heart was pounding like I'd run upstairs. And then I waited. I told myself I needed to think. I told myself I didn't want to cry on the phone. I told myself I'd call after supper. I kept moving, cleaning and folding and doing anything except ironing. By 10 o'clock the envelope was still on the table. I picked up the phone once and set it down again. Pride is a quiet thing. It just whispers, "Later." At 10:30 the phone rang. It wasn't Tommy. It was a state trooper asking if I was Evelyn Carter. The rest came out in plain words. My son, Thomas Carter, had been in an accident on the interstate. He was gone. They found my number in his wallet, folded small on a piece of paper. I remember the floor under my knees. I remember the taste of toothpaste because I'd brushed my teeth. I remember the hallway clock tapping like nothing in the world had changed. For years that night replayed in my head. If I had called at 6, would he have stayed home? If I had said, "Hi, baby," would he have heard it and held it close? If I had told him I loved him, would it have softened anything for him on the road? I don't know. You don't get answers. You get the questions. I kept that grocery envelope. I slept with it on my nightstand for a while. I wanted to dial the number anyway, just to hear it ring. I wanted proof he had been real and not some dream I'd ruined. A year later, my granddaughter Lila stayed the night. She was 12, all elbows and curiosity. She found the envelope in my drawer and brought it to me. She said, "Grandma, who's Tommy?" I tried to speak and my voice broke. So I told her the truth in a way a child could carry. I told her he was my son. I told her we'd been apart a long time. I told her he called. and I didn't call back fast enough. She asked, "Did you love him?" I said yes. I said it like it was the only clean thing left. She took my hand and said, "Then he knew." Not as advice, just a simple thought, like she was stating the colour of the sky. After she fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with a pen and paper and wrote Tommy a letter. I told him where I was wrong. I told him I was scared and stubborn. I told him I was proud of him for finding his own way. I told him I should have said hi and come home and I love you before I ran out of chances. I folded that letter and put it in a box with a California postcard and a picture of him as a boy, smiling with dirt on his chin. The box is still here. Nights I set it on my lap like a reminder that love can be true and still arrive late. Now, at 90, the house is quiet most nights. The quiet doesn't frighten me anymore, but it does bring memories right up close. When there's no noise, your mind fills the space. If you're listening to me, I'm not here to tell you how to live. I'm just telling you what still visits me when the lights go out. I let pride have one more evening, and it took the place of a simple phone call. If there's someone you keep meaning to reach, someone you've been avoiding because it feels awkward, I won't push you. I'll just tell you what the night keeps asking me. What were you waiting for? Tonight, when I turn off the lamp, I'll probably hear that imaginary ringing again, and I'll put my hand on that box and remember what a 12-year-old girl told her grandmother. If I loved him, then he knew. I hold on to that, not like an answer, but like a small, quiet mercy.